Bernard Tobin here at the Agricultural Excellence Conference, catching up now with Ellen Crane. She's a Nuffield scholar who's just done a presentation basically on opportunities for Canadian beef internationally around the world. And Ellen, thanks for stopping by.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about this. Now, you're originally a beef farmer from Prince Edward Island, born and raised, and today you work for the Beef Cattle Research Council. But when Nuffield came calling, you had this idea of looking at opportunities, and I guess what really spurred this was all these trade deals that we've struck as a country.
Mm-hmm. So at the time when I was doing my initial research, we had a lot of trade deals on the go. So we had the new NAFTA, so the USMCA, we had the CETA agreement, and we had the CPTPP on the table. So a lot of uncertainty of how that was going to play out and where some of our opportunities might be. And one of the reasons I wanted to focus on some of the countries that were involved in CETA and CPTPP is that about 70% of our market it goes to the United States. So if we ever have an issue with a border closure with the United States, that's a lot of revenue for our industry. So looking at where are the other opportunities in some of these other markets is what I was interested in. So looking at what are those consumers valuing in those other countries when they're purchasing beef products, and how we can change our management here in Canada to leverage those opportunities when we're accessing new international markets.
Now, you travel around the world, Europe, Asia, US, Canada, and you looked at a number of different things. So I'll quickly run through it. I mean, what did you learn about price?
Well, price was interesting. When you're talking to a consumer, price is king. It's one of the first things that someone is going to look at before they purchase something. And they're going to be determining whether they're getting value for that price. So we want to ensure that value is going to be there for that customer. One interesting example was from a grocery store in Osaka, Japan. It was a higher-end grocery store where we had Ontario corn-fed beef alongside of an authentic Wagyu steak. There was a third of the price was the Ontario corn-fed steak, about $10 Canadian. The Wagyu steak was about $30. But what the retail manager was able to tell me that the mother of two kids that's coming grocery shopping there once or twice a week, they're going to purchase that Ontario corn-fed feed to their family more often, because the Wagyu steak is a richer ingredient that you want to enjoy in smaller pieces. Where you eat the Ontario corn-fed, you get more nutrient value from that for a better price, and think that's something that we could be leveraging more with our Canadian products or something.
What about food safety? I mean, so much of that is, label claims, antibiotic use, traceability. What did you learn about food safety?
So there's a lot of different themes under the food safety umbrella. So like you mentioned, there was traceability and hormone use and things like that. Those are things that you might want to see on a label that's going to be valuable to the consumer, especially things like hormone use or anti-GMO, things like that. So under the food safety umbrella, I focused in on traceability. So looking at the UK system, the European system in general, looking at the double ear tagging system, which I thought was interesting, where one falls out, you still have one there. The passport system that they use there, where same as you or me, they have a passport that follows them throughout their entire life and indicates where they've been. Now they moved that into a more electronic system instead of using the paper-based system to make that more efficiently, to improve that communication between owners of that product, which has been very effective, and they're very proud of that in the UK. And it's one of those areas I think that we can step up our game in Canada, is to do a bit better job with our traceability. It's a huge challenge to try and take on traceability, particularly in the beef sector. But I think that by doing a better job of making those connections of where an animal has been, that's going to be something that's valued by someone in an international buyer that's bringing in a product for a market that already has that expectation, already has that available.
A fascinating look at the Eurogrid and what people are looking for from their meat, for their beef across Europe. What can we learn from there? How can we fit? on that grid. Tell us about the grid.
So the Europe grid is interesting because there's 108 possible combinations that you could get for grading in that system compared to our Canadian system where you could have about 36 possibilities for a grading combination. So their system's a little bit more complex where they're looking at the conformation of that animal. So like I said, I was a 4-H'er, so when I heard that they're looking at conformation, I thought, okay, well, what does feet and legs and structure have to do with the carcass? But it's really looking at the muscling of that carcass, so how athletic that carcass is looking. So the more athletic looking it is, the better. And then they also score it based on that fat cover, where supposedly that more is better. But if you're looking at the Europe grid and what their stats are, they're getting more premium prices for an animal that is a leaner build with less fat. So a breed like a Limousin or a Salur or a Charolais, they're doing better on those grids, and they're more popular in Europe because they do better on the Europe grid.
One thing we're always fascinated by and we're always focused on, and that is presentational labeling here in the U.S. But you stumble across some really interesting sort of examples of effective labeling and demands from labeling across Europe.
Yeah, so in particular in the UK, they cram a lot of information onto a label. So there could be anything from the nutritional information of that product, cooking instructions, how to best store it. They might even have the store's brand philosophy on that packaging. So it's kind of closing in that gap between the consumer and the producer, because you're able to put in more of that information about how to best enjoy that product, the story about where that product came from, and what the philosophies are behind that, and being able to back up some of the claims that you have in that label that the consumer might be looking for. You're not going to see something like hormone-free or antibiotic-free or GMO ingredient-free, because those don't exist in Europe and the UK, so that doesn't exist there.
Well, Ellen, a tremendous journey and some great insights. Thank you for taking the time. Thanks for stopping by.
No, thank you for having me.